Hi. Can everybody hear me? Yes. How's everybody liking lunch? I heard no response. That must mean the food is good, or the mouths are full. Anybody try the dessert, by the way? Nobody tried the dessert? Oh, you guys missed the dessert. It was in the corner. I saw it. I may have had 3 pieces. I'm not sure. But with that being said, I'd like to kind of reintroduce myself, tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Knut Sharafi. Again, I'm a personal trainer. My company is Real Results. I help people lose weight, get in shape. I deal with a lot of moms. I do a lot of healthy cooking demos and events I've done some events at mosques, churches, schools, and gyms. And I'm just extremely excited to be a part of Skinless. I am not around so many empowered women in one group. I'm in one room before. I'm kind of young, so most of my friends are like drinking and stuff for the most part, and hungover on Sunday nights, Sunday mornings. So I'm excited to be here with this awesome group of women, and I'm hoping I'll be here for years to come. And I'd like to, again, say thank you to Skinless and Hina Musabji, who made me come, and she was like, you got to be a part of it. With that being said, our keynote speaker actually today is Pilar Gerasimo. She's the editor-in-chief of Experience Life magazine. It's been going on for 10 years. They reach out to millions of people throughout the year, and what's different about the magazine is it doesn't just tell you how to get a nice round butt. It doesn't just tell you how to get 6-pack abs, which, let's be real, a lot of us are not going to get. It tells you how to balance life, and it tells you how to live a healthy life, not just what to do for your workout. So Pilar not only does the magazine, she does a lot of public speaking. So we're pretty excited to have her here today, and I'm very excited to introduce her. Pilar Gerasimo, I'm hoping it's an awesome, awesome speech. I expect nothing but the less. So I'd appreciate if you guys could put your forks down for just a second and give her a warm welcome.
Wow, thank you so much. I love getting introduced. It just makes me feel important. Thank you very much. And thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I was really intrigued by the whole notion. I think I have like 2 mics going. Can I turn this one off? See? Okay. I was really intrigued by the idea of this conference because in some ways it really reflects a lot of the same values that are behind the magazine that I started like 11 years ago now. And it's fun to be able to talk to a group of women, and I think there's something about that kind of audience that makes it easier to prepare this kind of talk. And the topic of the talk sort of morphed over the course of a few weeks, but it's really focused on a couple of my favorite topics, which is personal power and health and fitness and happiness, which I think of as going through as being all connected. So I've got 45 minutes in principle, and I'm going to try to stick with the 45 minutes, but I have so much to talk to you about. So I think the first question I wanted to address is where personal power comes from. I think there's sort of a popular idea that we should all be as powerful as we can be, and no one really explains how to do that. In school, sometimes the most powerful people are the bullies, and we don't want to be bullies. So where does real personal power come from? This is sort of my theory about personal power, and it can come from lots of places, but above all, I think it comes from taking care of yourself and knowing yourself enough that you are able to manifest characteristics like this. I don't think power comes from violence. I don't think it comes from the ability to force people to do what you want. I do think it comes from these things, and I've emphasized health for a reason. I've got a kind of a fundamental philosophy I'm going to talk about today, and you can take issue with it. It may be just be my point of view. But I think that health is a very interesting gateway to personal power. And that may sound a little strange because we think of health sometimes as something we do to take care of ourselves and not necessarily as a means for expressing ourselves. But I'm going to give you 3 reasons I think that health is perhaps the ultimate gateway. One is that without optimal health and vitality, everything else that we want to do gets harder. You know, that feeling of like getting up in the morning and getting out of bed, all of that's more challenging. Taking on major professional goals, if you don't have high vitality, very tough to do. If you're sick, if you're at the hospital or at the doctor, or your relatives are taking care of you, whatever it is, it's just like, how are you going to get anywhere with that? The second reason is that all of the choices that we make to be healthy are daily choices, or at least daily options, daily possibilities. And I like the idea of raising your personal awareness and growing yourself as a human being in a way that gives you day-to-day opportunities to make choices and day-to-day feedback about those choices and how it's working. It's really different than taking on, I'm going to have integrity. I mean, you can work on having integrity every day too, but it's sort of amorphous, whereas healthy choices are something that you can actually say, yes, I'm doing this, or no, I'm not. This is perhaps the most important point. Whatever is getting in the way of you being your healthiest, best self is also getting in the way of all kinds of other things, and it's holding you back in other areas. So think about that for just a second, because I realize it's kind of a big idea. Most of the time, I have a great quote from a Zen teacher called, her name is Sherry Huber, and the quote is, how you do anything is how you do everything. And the idea that where our limitations show up, they're showing up in all sorts of other places. So if you have trouble telling the truth, it means you probably have trouble telling the truth in a lot of ways. If you tend to procrastinate, you probably tend to procrastinate in a lot of areas. If you go into things full bore and then give up in some little way, it's going to show up in other areas of your life. And so I love the thing about health is that as you address your health and fitness issues, you by necessity address other limitations and other issues. So what are those limitations? What are the limiting factors that get in the way of us being healthy? These are just a few, and I won't go through all of them because I think that many of them speak for themselves, but what I've discovered in the 11 years of doing the magazine is that the obstacles that people run up against in their health and fitness really are about these things. It's not so much about knowing exactly what diet to follow or what workout to do. It's not about which pill you're taking. Almost always when people have long-term challenges with their health and fitness, it's one of these reasons. And for women, it's the first one. Almost all of the time, it's somewhere in there. We don't know where we start and other people stop, or we don't know how to say, yes, this is my time for me. But my kids, but my job, but someone needs me. And that becomes a very convenient excuse over time. But ultimately, I would argue that these are the things. So interestingly, all of these are the things that get in the way of people achieving their full potential too. If you think about it, if you're making yourself a low priority in terms of your health and fitness choices, I don't have time to get to the gym, I'll just eat this little snack, I really shouldn't take time to take a nap because someone needs something from me. Probably how you do anything is how you do everything, and that's showing up elsewhere. So how do you change that? I mean, it's hard enough to just think about changing your diet or your normal routine to get exercise. How do you go about changing these fundamental things, these patterns in your life? Guess what? It's a daily deal. It's very rarely a one-shot, one-bullet thing. So what I'm going to be sharing with you today is a little bit of what I've learned over the course of the past 25 years, more or less. A lot of it very hard-won, hard-fought information. This is a course that I developed out of that work. And some of what I'm going to share next comes from Refine Your Life, sometimes called Change Your Life. But it's really a collection of information that I learned out of necessity for myself, and then began cobbling together some of the best stuff I found. Where I wasn't finding things that worked well for me, I started to develop my own tools. It's a real passion for me. So this is sort of the way that I see personal change. Whenever we decide to change our lives in some conscious direction, there's sort of a big picture vision out there on the horizon. Whether you're aware of it or not, there's some desire that's calling you forward. I'd like my life to be a little different somehow. And maybe you have a picture of it in your head. Maybe it's about your ideal body. Maybe it's about a different financial reality. Maybe it's about a partner, or a family, or a house, or a job, whatever it is. Somewhere out there on the horizon is this vision of how you'd like your life to be. Then there's you, wherever you are now. And where you are now is really always good. It's exactly where you should be. It's a perfect spot for you. It's a starting place. Between you and that vision, that ideal life, there are goals to achieve. There are tasks to be done. For some reason, this helped me because when I was thinking about personal development, it always seemed like either too rigid, I had to do this specific list of things, or it was so vague that I had no sense of context. And I liked a landscape as a sort of a metaphor for where I was going in life. So almost all of us have some things we'd like to change about our lives. Even, people who are very happy and very satisfied, some of how they got that way was having the ambition to change their lives in conscious directions. And when we begin a conscious change effort, we often have this energy and enthusiasm, like, yay, I'm gonna go do it now, I'm determined. The first thing that happens when we start making conscious change is we run into our own obstacles. We run into our limiting factors. Sometimes they're limiting factors like belief systems. Sometimes they're limiting factors like I don't have enough resources or enough energy or time to do this. Or there are people who are sabotaging me, or I'm scared of change. So as we begin to pursue our path, we discover it's not a flat line into the horizon. It goes uphill. And that's where the rubber meets the road. That's where things get really interesting. Because the obstacles in between you and whatever goal you're trying to achieve are exactly the obstacles that are limiting you in 1,000 other ways in your life. So this is sort of, for lack of any better model, kind of after 11 years, what I found was true in almost all the systems I was studying. A cycle of personal change that usually begins with assessment. Where am I? How am I feeling? What's going on in my world? What's important to me now? That would then move you into a commitment phase. Well, of all the things I could work on, this is the one that's calling. This is the one that I need to deal with. And this is the one I'm ready to deal with. There's an interesting thing in health and fitness literature, well, actually all healthy way of life literature, about readiness to change. And it turns out you can't push somebody to make a change before they're ready. Change doesn't happen all of a sudden. You move from pre-contemplation, where you're not even thinking about it, to contemplation. Well, maybe I should make some changes, to preparation. Wow, if I'm gonna do this, I gotta fill in the blank. Get some running shoes, get help stopping smoking, get a therapist, get a coach. I gotta clean out my pantry. I gotta get new sheets, whatever it is. And then the preparation phase moves you into action. That is not the end of the road. From action, people often go backwards. I wasn't prepared enough. I have to go back to preparation and figure some stuff out. Or, oh, that is so hard. Maybe I'll do it next year. And they're suddenly back in contemplation, right? It's rare to go all the way back to pre-contemplation. Usually once you're thinking about it, you're thinking about it. So I go from contemplation to preparation to action. And then once I've sat and worked on that for about 6 months or so, I end up in sort of a maintenance phase. From there, after a year or two, I can move into what's called adoption or termination. And then I very rarely go back from there. But this is an important point, because once you've committed to something and you begin taking action, you get feedback. And the feedback is going to tell you, are you prepared or not? Do you have the right skill sets? Do you have the right knowledge base? Do you have the right support? Do you have the right resources? Do you really care? How much passion do you have for this change? The feedback, when you start getting into trouble, when you start feeling the hill working against you, and you're like, oh, this is so hard, that's really a great part of this cycle. And that's where you're going to get the information about what you need to do to make adjustments. That's the follow-through cycle. That's where most people quit, by the way. People just quit. They go, it's hard, I don't know how, I don't have the tools. You've seen this a million times, right, Knut? So many times, she says, yeah. And this is the thing that's so important to understand about personal power and about personal change in general. And I'm going to tell you a little bit of my story. How you go about responding to the resistance, to the obstacle, to the difficulty, is going to determine not just the successful outcomes of your original goal, but it's going to determine who you become as a person and how much better you become as a person. So it starts with this vision, and then it moves you through a kind of goal process. You can call it goals, you can call it desires or objectives, whatever you want. But it never stops. This is the other magic thing about life change and personal change, is it just keeps going. I'm going to tell you my story. This is my mom in about 1968, by the size of me. That's me, the naked little kid with the chubby thighs. And yes, my mom's pregnant and smoking, which goes to show you how long ago this was. My mom hates this picture because she's in the middle of saying something, but I think it's such a cute, there I am, a flower child, 1968 maybe. My mom is really an extraordinary person, and I love to give her props, particularly at a women's conference, because I think our mothers give us so many gifts, and mine certainly did. This is probably 1970 or so. It looks like she's at Woodstock or something. And this is her with her best friend, Mary Ellen. They were both faculty wives at Lake Forest College, where my dad was a professor. But my mom really had a strong passion. She had a vision. And her vision was to raise her children on a farm. She'd grown up on a farm in Minnesota, and her best friend, Mary Ellen, also had. And they decided they were going to, this is Days of Women's Lib. They're like, heck with this whole, follow our husbands around. We want to, do what we want to do. And we believe our kids should be raised in clean air with healthy food. And next thing you know, this is, yeah, 1970. And who remembers